Welcome, welcome. Welcome to our April opening. This month we're excited to celebrate artist Willa Venema. Right there, can you hear me? No, Jim Brady cannot hear me. Willa Venema, Bibi Ginalot, Sarah Verardo, and Ryan Kohler. So let's give them a little round of encouragement there. My name is Emma Wilson, and I'm joined with my colleagues Kevin Thomas, Sean Thomas, and Jess Brayboy in welcoming you here this evening. This is what happens with readers. I can never tell they should be on or off or on and off. So a huge thank you to Sean and to Jess and to Missy too for their incredible work installing this month's exhibition. I was out of town and they took it on completely, and I'm just so appreciative of their vision and their talent. And thank you as well to our artists who continue to create and inspire us, and to our clients who continue to support the arts in such meaningful ways. And of course, a shout out to the fabulous Lucy Denton, who is pouring beverages from Oak Hill Beverage this evening, and thank you so much for that, Lucy. So spring in Maine, it has a way of arriving sort of quietly at first, and then disappears and then comes back again. But it's really most about the light for me. You know, I'm no longer waking up in the dark. I'm no longer leaving work in the dark. Maybe that's more important. The days stretch a little longer and the colors begin to shift just a bit. My crocuses have come out, and familiar places begin to feel just slightly different. It's not that anything's really changed, it's more that we begin to see what was there with some fresh attention. And for many of us, that attention can carry a lot, moments of renewal, but also moments of reflection, of memory, and holding on to what matters. So that sense of reemergence, of noticing, of returning, of seeing something familiar in new ways, it runs through all of the work that's shared tonight. We had a group of fourth graders from Breakwater School here this week, and they're doing an assignment where they're creating art to tell a story, whether about the Underground Railroad or the westward expansion. And so they spread all out. It was awesome. And then they came in here, and we had a gigantic piece by an artist that was more a narrative piece. And really we just asked, like, what do you notice? What is it that you wonder about this painting? And of course, as you can imagine, they had thoughts, and they were curious, and they were honest, and they were completely unfiltered. And it was like such a great reminder of how we can approach looking at art. So I hope you'll spend some time with the paintings, allow yourself to notice something that draws you in, and maybe even ask what it is that you wonder. So, and if something stays with you, we're happy to talk about it. And now I'd like to introduce, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Lisa Belisle. Lisa is the host, as many of you know, of Radio Maine with Dr. Lisa Belisle. She's hosted over 250 episodes with people connected with the broader Portland Art Gallery community. Many of you are here. Maybe some of you are future guests, so we'll be excited to ask you about that. Please welcome Dr. Lisa Belisle.
So you can tell I'm a Maine girl, because when somebody gave me a container of maple syrup, I did not want to put it down. I'm going to carry this with me for the rest of the evening. Interestingly enough, the person who gave this to me was actually, well, I think it was Henry, who's Ryan's son, who very reluctantly gave over the syrup that apparently he made from his trees. He's the sap master, is that what you called him? Henry the sap master. So what I love about this season, and what I love about what Emma said, is that when we look at the things that we think we've seen so many times in exactly the same way, we can get a little bored. I picked the color of the season, Emma did too, which would be mud. This is mud season. So we dressed appropriately. Sometimes we can forget that actually when you look in a different way, you might see something differently. So when I went back to my Radio Maine interviews with each of the artists, I was reminded of some very interesting things. I was reminded that Ryan was a musician at one point, and we have some evidence of this behind me. I did not know that he was a sap master, so there's one very interesting clue that emerged out of the conversation I had with him on Radio Maine. I remember that Willow went to the School of the Performing Arts, which I think it's the Fame School, is that right? The one that those of you who remember, I don't know, was that the 80s, was that the 90s? I'm gonna live forever. Anybody remember this at all? All right, very good. Okay, so that is the school she went to, because she actually was a flautist before she became this sort of artist. And then talking to Bibby, of course, 20 years. She did her own cooking piece, and you were a classically trained chef, if I remember correctly, worked for Williams Sonoma. I mean, that's a very interesting factoid. And then Sarah Verardo, she actually worked for Gucci for a while. She was doing digital marketing during a time that they thought, you know what, clothes will never sell, we'll just sell shoes. Imagine that. So all these things are these interesting little strands that we get. And this is when we talk to the artists, which is what I love doing because I love their art, but I also love hearing their stories on Radio Maine. And any of you who haven't heard our artists' stories, please do take the time to actually go back and listen to the interviews or to go to Substack where we have an online magazine. You can read about the artists. There are so many interesting layers to what our artists bring to our artist community. And I also would I would bring you into our Radio Maine Live, which is going to be April 16th. And actually, Jim was part of one of the first ones that we had, which was in January. We have them quarterly. The next one is Emergence in Light. If you're interested in hearing from a conductor, a woman conductor, one of the few female conductors, Emily Isaacson, in the entire country, and how she emerged out of sort of a little bit of loneliness and isolation and somewhat torment to be the head of Classical Uprising here in Portland, and also Heather Shields, who was raised, I believe, 15 miles off the coast of Maine by her in North Haven, an island. So she's going to talk about this very successful community building she's been doing after emerging from her time with her father as 35 years as a tugboat captain. And then we've got Christopher O'Connor, one of our artists who's here at the Art Gallery. I don't know, is he here tonight? Yes. Okay, so Christopher O'Connor. Chris, are you there? Christopher. So if you want to hear from Christopher and about his time wandering about Europe after coming out of Dingle, Ireland, and essentially self-training himself as an artist, which is amazing because my kind of self-training does not get him the type of work that he is offering us these days. So these are the types of people that you will hear here on the 16th of April for Radio Maine Live. I invite you to come join us again on the 16th of April for Radio Maine Live. And also, Deirdre Heersink, I've almost forgot her. She is a doctor that works with patients who are older. And did you know that 60% of older patients who are in facilities never receive any sort of visitor? So she's gone around and she's collected their stories. So these are the types of things that we talk about on Radio Maine. And tonight we're going to focus back on the 4 artists that we have here at the show because they have just the same sorts of amazing stories that we're talking about for Radio Maine in general. Thank you so much for giving me a moment of your time. Really appreciate it. And nobody is prying the syrup out of my hands as long as I'm still alive. Thank you.
So I'm from New Jersey. My syrup is way hidden. You're never going to find it. It's gone. I got that syrup and I swirled it away immediately. All right, let's hear from our artists. First, I'd like to introduce artist Willa Venema. Where are you, Willa? Working with beeswax, pigment, and found materials, Willa creates layered, luminous surfaces that balance abstraction with the quiet presence of landscape and sea. There is a certain physicality of Willa's works, but there's also this stillness that invites you to stay. As well as her other academic endeavors, her foundation began at Oberlin College, where she studied art history and studio art. That combination of scholarship and hands-on practice is evident in her work. Now she divides her time between Portland and Swans Island. We know it's summer when Willa packs up and goes to Swans Island. She continues to push the possibilities of the encaustic medium. Please welcome artist Willa Venema.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. It's really great to see so many friendly, happy faces and feel your support. So thanks a lot. And I just was telling somebody today that I think it's about my 10th year here at the gallery, and it's an amazing place to be a part of. I think that the whole team at Portland Art Gallery really produces this community between artists and art lovers and artists and art collectors, and it really is a unique place in that way, I think, for an art gallery. So I want to thank the team, Sean and Jess and Emma and Kevin and Lisa, because they make it all happen every month and they do so much behind the scenes. So it's really an amazing job they do. So if you haven't seen my work yet, it's out in that room by the food table, and I had a really fantastic experience this summer that sort of inspired that work. There is a sailboat race that comes out of a body of water called Eggemoggin Reach, and it empties out into Jericho Bay. And the island we go to in the summer faces Jericho Bay. And we have a little motorboat, and we took our motorboat out and met the regatta as it was coming out of the reach. And we just tootled around, and there's over 100 boats that participate. It's been going on for 40 years, and they only had to not do it once because of fog. So it's, they go out in all weather. But this happened to be a perfect, beautiful Maine day, sparkly water, clear sky, not really enough wind. I think probably some of the sailors were a little disappointed, but it was just such a stunning, beautiful visual experience, and I kind of knew right away I was going to do something with it when I got home. So I got to work in the fall, and I started out with the biggest piece, and I realized pretty soon that I wasn't going to actually try to depict a race, because in real life, like, the boats are all sort of smashed up together and they're all kind of chaotic, and that's not the feel that I wanted to go for. I wanted to go for a more peaceful, open feeling, and so I kind of spread the boats out and made lots of water, and I think I captured the feel of being in the water with the boats, but I didn't, try to make it this hectic race-like experience, because that's just not where I was going for. But if you want to talk to me and learn more about my process, which is I use the encaustic medium, which is a wax-based medium that you use in molten state, I'll be out there after everybody's done talking, and you can come up and I'll give you some tips about that and explain how I make them, because it's a pretty exciting medium to use.
Thank you, Willa. And now I'd like to introduce artist Sarah Verardo. Where is Sarah? There she is, based in Providence, Rhode Island. Sarah draws deeply from her connection to the New England coast. After 14 years in New York City, she moved back to Rhode Island with a renewed attention to the shoreline, treating it as both a visual subject and a kind of spiritual touchstone. Through her oil paintings, she honors the way landscapes can steady a life in both difficult and celebratory seasons. Working in delicate layers of oil, Sarah builds surfaces that capture subtle shifts of light and texture. Please welcome artist Sarah Verardo.
So forgive me, I have to use notes. When I get nervous, I forget everything. So unfortunately, I'm not from Maine. I'm from Rhode Island. I grew up in a small beach town. I'm a self-proclaimed townie. Everything I paint is something that I've found, and most of the things I found close to my childhood home. My subjects started as mostly shells and stones, but basically everything that I paint is something caught somewhere in its natural cycle at some point in its degradation. This is my third show here, and I realize that every show is like the perfect marker for how my style has evolved. It's sort of my Portland show is how I now track my milestones. With this collection especially, it was very different for me. I've expanded into other objects like driftwood and bones and sea glass. It was just a really, really fun experimentation. But more than that, I found that I stopped thinking about them so much as just these objects and more honing in on the forms. So you'll see that there's a lot of tighter crops, and it's a little bit different than some of my previous pieces. The little imperfections and the way that the light hits something, the contrast, the lack of contrast, these are all these just super beautiful moments that, in the end up mattering more than what the actual object is. At the core of everything is just this continuous observation. It's a snapshot between becoming and unbecoming. And everything I paint is organic. Everything is formed and destroyed by the same thing, the ocean. Sort of like people. They're here for a moment in time, and then they go back into the world. I think that these are they're, they emote more than just the object that they are, and I love hearing from people what they make them feel and what they think that they're talking to each other or doing to each other. So please come up to me and tell me. I love it. So thank you so much to this wonderful team. This is always such a great event for me, and I love doing it every year. I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, all the way from California, woohoo, is Baby Ginalot. And if you want to know how to pronounce her last name, it's I don't like Ginalot. Some people like Ginalot. Am I right about that? Yes, okay. All right, so Bibi is a mixed media artist known for her bold, layered works that transform found materials into vibrant contemporary collage, using fragments of everyday life, letters, wallpaper, collected materials. I was with her this morning. It was a piece of a leftover something on the ground that she found. IPA carton right there. It was so good. So anyway, she creates these compositions that radiate that energy and discovery. Her process is as compelling as the finished work. She describes it as a dance between putting down, letting go, covering up, and beginning again. A rhythm that embraces imperfection and transformation. Please welcome artist Bibi Ginalot.
This might be a little short for me. My speech is only 30 pages, so I'll try to keep it brief. I'm just kidding. The work you're viewing was created during the most transformative year of my life. 1 year ago this Sunday, I got the call that no one wants to get. "You've got cancer," the nurse practitioner said. The next day, my primary care physician called, and I assumed she was calling about treatment plans. This may sound very California woo-woo, but instead she asked me why I thought this was happening on a spiritual level. I said, for self-love. And she said, yes, self-love is the highest form of worship there is. And just like that, the tone was set for everything that followed. I chose to see my cancer journey as a health opportunity, a chance to grow, to love myself more fully. I had surgery, and I'm grateful and lucky that it resolved quickly. But the shift it created is lasting. People expected me to react differently, but when you change your perspective, even the hardest things become gifts. Because even in the darkest of times, I'm always looking for hope, miracles, and light. And this is where Holding Space for Miracles was born. And then later, Carrier of the Light, which is right next to it. The studio became my sanctuary throughout all of it, the place where I could process everything I was moving through, both the cancer journey and later the decline and passing of my father. He was 93 and had been living with dementia, and I had to learn to live with him differently. And I was given the profound honor of holding his hand as he crossed over, which was the biggest honor of my life. I didn't grieve in the traditional sense because I feel his presence all the time, in the studio and here tonight. His humor, whimsy, and joy are sprinkled in these 24 by 24s, and he nudged me as I was working on them and had me add a chocolate bar wrapper, which I did, because chocolate was his favorite. This body of work is a direct expression of both of these journeys, and in both cases, what looked like loss turned out to be something else entirely. Standing here, 1 year later, I can say with full certainty, I would not change a thing. Thank you to the Portland Art Gallery for this opportunity and for all your hard work and support. It's an honor to be here tonight alongside all the other gallery artists, and I am deeply grateful for all of those who made the trek to come out tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bibi. All right, now we're going to bring it back a little bit closer to home. We're going to bring it back to Maine with artist Ryan Kohler. Ryan, a Maine-based artist known for his vibrant mixed media paintings that bring together careful observation and bold abstraction. His work captures the energy of Maine's working waterfronts, harbors, landscapes, the famous beam boots, layering color, texture, and a rhythm in a way that feels both familiar and unexpected. There's a strong sense of movement in Ryan's work, influenced by his background in music, and a clear intention to keep the eye engaged, to create that visual hook that draws you back again and again. Based in Skowhegan, Ryan paints daily in his studio with his gorgeous family being there, and he creates these He says his paintings are often been described as kind of a party on a canvas. That's pretty accurate. So please welcome artist Ryan Kohler.
Okay, so thank you all for being here. First, I want to thank the gallery and all those involved with getting the show together and hung and looking as fabulous as it does. Kevin, Lisa, Sean, Emma, and Jess, thank you all for all that you do. I also want to thank my family and friends for being here. It's really nice to be surrounded and supported by you guys. I love you all and I think about you a lot. More than you know, you mean a lot to me. Extra special thank you to my wife Danielle and my son Henry, who are both here today as well. The show is dedicated to Henry. I'm holding his shoe right now, apparently. It's just kind of how it goes sometimes. Danielle is my North Star, the light of my life, and Henry is the sun in my universe. So the show would not look the way that it does without him. So I'm not trying to make being a dad like my total like my whole identity, you know, but I do recognize that this is the season of my life that I'm in, and I'm leaning into that in a way and seeing how that comes through in my daily routine and obviously in my work as well. So the idea for the alphabet series came to me when I was titling the smallest painting in the show, D for Deer, back there by the bar. It was a day where I didn't have much time. I was with Henry. He just wanted to be held, and I wanted to paint, so I was like, all right, we're doing this. You know, I picked him up, and I just grabbed a small canvas. I wasn't going to do a 48 by 60 or anything. And I did that, the whole painting, pretty much entirely while holding Henry. At the end of it, I grabbed a little D from my paper scraps and added it to the surface there. Titled it D for Deer, and I really didn't think much of it. It was maybe the next day, or maybe 2 days later, I can't remember, but I was reading him a story, kind of a more conventional, traditional A to Z alphabet story, picture book, and I got to thinking like all the things that I would do if I were to make my own book, and the things that I would do differently. So, of course, then I remembered I already had one. I had D for Deer. And I was like, oh, geez, wouldn't that be cool? I could do a painting for each letter of the alphabet. And then I was like, oh my God, that's 26 paintings. Like, could I pull that off in time for the show? And then I also had the idea to cut and include that letter and adhere it to the surface of each painting. So in each one of these, like this is H for Harbor, you can find an H on it. Yeah, B is for boots, you could find a B. And I thought that was kind of neat because it just leaned into the whole playful aspect of it, like, you know, the I Spy kind of scavenger hunt, hunt and seek, exploratory nature of the show. And I thought it would also invite viewers to go up and kind of look at the paintings a little closer and kind of inspect what's going on the surface and some of the materials that I've used. Yeah, so as for the images themselves, I basically continued to paint what I normally do. It was also a way for me to kind of try some subject matter out that I hadn't tried before, but I'm still fairly traditional in like what I'm painting. Like I love painting boats, I love painting boots in the city and deer. So it was a fun way for me to figure out how to include them all. But it was challenging at times for obvious reasons. But one kind of funny, challenging thing was I was like, oh, I've got this great like taxi cab here. This could easily be T for taxi cab. And I'm like, oh wait, T's already taken for trumpet, you know. And then I'm like, well, I could move trumpet to H for horns, but that's harder. Like I can't change that. So there was a lot of like shuffling around at the end, but it all came together. There are some that are not finished yet. The series is ongoing. When they are done, I do plan to possibly actually turn it into a book. So I think that would be nice. So stay tuned for that. Other than that, thank you all for being here. That's all the time I have. Thank you to the gallery.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our artists for sharing your stories, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And yeah, that's it.